Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator, and welcome back to Total Party Skills. Apparently, an article from Time magazine is starting to make the rounds, which was written by a self-professed nerdy girl. And since I'm sure people will be talking about it, considering it's in such a quote-unquote high-profile publication, if such things even exist anymore, it'll probably get a little bit more attention. The thing basically kind of reads as kind of like a softball ad pitch, just to, convince some people who might be on the fence about Dungeons & Dragons to maybe give it a shot. It was surprisingly sympathetic towards the older gamers from what little there was in it. It's not a terribly long article, a very detailed, like I said, it's just a real kind of just basic level pitch, and there's not a whole lot to say about it. By coincidence, last night, because of Paramount Plus, I finally got around to sitting down and watching Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which, once again, had not all the controversy erupted at the beginning of the year, probably would have been a much more enjoyable and less self-conscious viewing experience than it turned out to be. On one hand, I applaud their use of trying to use more practical effects, especially for creatures. However, I wish they had gone with a better company, because too often the heads of the various, animal people type characters in Dragonborn were real obviously an animatronic rubber head fitted over another person's head, so they seemed a little oversized. But like I said, at least points for them actually trying to use practical effects and not CGI that'll look good today and look like shit 3 years later. Way too exposition heavy at the beginning. Kind of feels more like jumping into an ongoing campaign than kind of conveying the beginning of a story. I'm not really sure if it really does all that good of a job at conveying the D&D experience because of the things they had to do to try to make it a functional fantasy movie. It did certainly have plenty of references and Easter eggs throughout it. I'm disappointed that Hugh Grant wasn't just Lord Neverember, and instead they had him play another character who was taking over for Lord Neverember. His particular kind of, charisma and guile would have, I thought, suited an interesting portrayal of that character, but I guess they're going with an older, further down the timeline depiction of the ruler of Neverwinter. For something that tried hard to include things from D&D at the same time, there's a few aspects of it that they didn't really quite convey things properly. There really wasn't anything about how magic that was portrayed that simulated the concept of, spell slots or limitations. The combat was not structured in such a way that you get that turn-based kind of feel from it at all. You could say that a lot of the movie could have been like nods at, jokes about failed persuasion rolls and things like that, or players jumping the gun right before the DM tells them they succeeded and instead, running off with some plan that makes things worse. Kind of like at the beginning when they escape from jail. The bar was so low for D&D movies, it's not like it had to do all that much to be better than the previous attempts at making a movie out of this content. How does it stack up against other fantasy epics? I guess it's alright. It's not the best thing ever. I do feel that there's still better, more inspirational movies that you can watch to get in the mood for D&D than this one, despite all of its Easter eggs and specific references. And just, I don't know. Unfortunately, as I said, there was a self-consciousness I felt while watching it that was born entirely out of, the earlier controversies that Wizards of the Coast brought upon themselves in previous months, which kind of spoiled, one's ability to kind of watch it with completely, clear vision and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of hard to say. I found it a bit of a struggle the first half. It got better over the course of the second half. The paladin character was just kind of a giant joke about the stereotypes of paladins in and them themselves, which I thought was fun and might have been their subtlest, most inside joke that wasn't just the typical things that you see in modern day action movies. There were certainly a couple of moments that seemed directly lifted out of movies like The Avengers, or even the second Wolverine movie where he was in Japan. When Wolverine kept having visions of Jean Grey after she died. There's some stuff going on with Chris Pine's character that was very reminiscent of that. And I don't know. It's basically seemed to kind of have more your younger audience in mind. People 12 thereabouts. Not really edgy enough for older teenagers and adults. Cartoony to a point where, as I said, there's times where it was a bit of a struggle to keep watching it and not just want to turn it off and finish it later. But after you get over the middle of the movie, you kind of at least start feeling, like enough of a sense of the characters and starting to actually start to like a couple of them a little bit where you feel a bit more invested in the events and to carry you through to the end. Not a masterpiece, flawed, but otherwise, good-ish movie. Just what a shame that its release and reception has been tainted the way it has, and in part why, I've made a point of waiting until I was able to watch it for free on something that I'm paying for anyway, because I want access to Star Trek shows, and the fact that Paramount Plus just happens to be hosting the Dungeons & Dragons movie is, just circumstantial. It has really, nothing. I didn't subscribe to it to be able to watch that movie. I wouldn't have subscribed to another streaming service that I'm not currently subscribed to just to be able to watch it. I'm about as hands-off on giving them any money for having viewed it as possible beyond whatever little residuals they get per view on Paramount Plus, since they have it up there for free for subscribers. So that's about it. It's interesting that Time Magazine has that article, because, to me, it's like soft public relations kind of a thing. Not really a bold, in-your-face ad, but more something to try to soften people's impression of it, and maybe try to stir, people's sympathy, and maybe get them to, remember the good times. Is kind of a vibe I got off that article, but I wouldn't really say there was anything stated in it that's otherwise really worthy of any sort of deep commentary. Certainly not multiple hours of live streaming on a Friday night just to talk about this really short article. So I guess that's about all I have to say. Until next time, stay next time. In the distant future of 1999, Amazon time barbarians fight to liberate the women of North America against vast armies of trolls and chads under the control of the Rogan Joe. This original tabletop role-playing game is thick with 2 C's. Available now on Amazon.com and DriveThru RPG.